Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. On today's episode, I will be targeting summer to fall transition catfish from the banks of beautiful Lake New Melones. Northern California is currently experiencing the summer to fall transition, so finding bait is key, especially during this time of year, as these fish are currently hunting bait fish at this reservoir. I found bait, therefore verifying that the area I am targeting will have catfish. However, today the area I'm targeting is extremely snaggy, so I will be fishing a three-way rig, very similar to saltwater fishing. However, the goal here is to use a crossline style swivel instead of a traditional three-way swivel. I have a 1-ounce bank sinker, just as if I were to be saltwater fishing, on a 20-inch sacrificial leader in the event I get hung up and I could drop the sinker, therefore allowing me to continue fighting a catfish. The way I like to loop on this sinker is I will tie an overhand loop knot on the sacrificial leader and just loop around this bank sinker. Thus, if I were to get hung up, I can quickly drop the sinker and continue to fight the fish. I noticed that this area does have bait fish. There were some grebes actively chasing the threadfin shad in this cove. This time of year, a lot of fish, including black bass, crappie, and channel catfish alike, will all be keying in on threadfin shad. It is very important to find the bait this time of year, because more times than not, that will be where all the fishes will be. More times than not, an angler will settle on an area without bait during this time of year and will end up not catching many catfish. This phenomenon will often stump the summer angler, because a lot of summer anglers will only fish for catfish during the summer, and what they will notice is the number of bites they'll get fishing their traditional summer catfish holding grounds. More times than not, many of these summer catfish anglers will start noticing the decreased number of bites they'll get in those areas. The reason is the bait fish are no longer there, and these catfish are starting to corral and hold closely the bait. The rod on the right hand side is slowly getting torn apart. This time of year, there will be all sizes of catfish holding very close to bait fish. New Melones Reservoir is a testament to how much bait fish there is in the water. The lake is being drawn down, therefore exposing much of the mud bottom in this little back bay. There are some catfish here holding because the bait fish are here. The threadfin shad are blooming. The amount of bait available in this reservoir is insane. A lot of these catfish and black bass are keying in on this bait. This little channel catfish ended up hooking himself on the circle hook, because once these catfish are located, especially when they're holding close to bait, they are not picky. An angler can pick them apart quite easily from the bank, especially if you are targeting an area where these fish are actively feeding. However, the downside of fishing in such conditions is the amount of catfish in all kinds of sizes available in these small areas. Because of the amount of bait fish in this particular area, this will draw all sizes of catfish, from these little fingerling catfish to your 20-pound channel catfish, or even your 2 to 3 pound white catfish. These fish will not be picky, and more times than not, it will come down to whichever fish finds your bait first. I ended up hooking into this little channel catfish, and I'll show him to you guys real quick. Alright little dude, off you go. Labor Day had come and gone, and that marks pretty much the end of summer here in Northern California. A lot of anglers, especially your seasonal anglers, have put the boat away. The kids are back in school, and the college students have started college. This is a great time of year for the bank angler to be out on the water, because if you are not prepping for a hunting season, this is a great time to target multiple species of fish. The rod on the right hand side ended up getting an extremely violent bite. I knew right away that this was a very good channel catfish. It began to death roll immediately, and I knew right away that this channel catfish was hooked very well. Some of my longtime subscribers and viewers might be wondering why I'm not using a fish finder rig or a sliding sinker rig here in this area. Well, one example is this area is often very snaggy, with a lot of strong boulders and a lot of fallen timber. This time of year, an angler does not get to choose an area where they want to target, because these catfish will let the angler know where they are at based on the bait fish they are feeding on or where the bait is. Since the bait is here in this particularly snaggy area, I am forced to adapt to fish this area. Because this target area is very snaggy, if I were to fish a fish finder rig, I will get hung up when the catfish begins to run. However, if I were to fish this 3-way rig with the crossline swivel, if the catfish were to get entangled, more times than not, it will be the sinker that ended up getting tangled with the bottom. I can quickly drop the sinker and the sacrificial leader and continue to fight the fish on my 6 to 8 inch leader. I have 30-pound Power Pro braid as my main line, and for the sacrificial leader, I have 12-pound monofilament. As for the leader to the hook, I have 15-pound monofilament to the hook. Therefore, if I were to get tangled up, I can quickly end up snapping off the sinker and continue to fight the fish on the very short leader with the hook. This time of year, when these catfish are on a feeding frenzy, they are not shy. An angler does not have to fish a running style rig like a fish finder rig, because a lot of times these fish will end up picking up the bait and will not let go. As Northern California begins to slowly progress into early fall, a lot of species of fishes know that lean times are coming ahead. Catfish in general will try and put on weight in order to sustain themselves throughout winter. They will continue to feed during the winter, but at a much slower pace than they would do during the summer and fall. This was a very nice channel catfish for New Melones Reservoir. This fish is well above 10 pounds, and I was very pleased that I ended up hooking into this fish. I'll show him to you guys real quick, and then I'll prep him for release. This was one very healthy channel catfish. New Melones is historically known to produce some very nice catfish, and at one time prior to COVID, it did host a yearly summer catfish competition, only second to that of Clear Lake. Alright buddy, rest up a bit and off you go. The rod on the right hand side was getting another bite. This time of year, for some strange reason, a lot of the juvenile channel catfish are a lot much more voracious due to the number of bait fish in this area. More times than not, these fish will often find the bait first prior to the adult channel catfish. I ended up picking up the rod and see if he was hooked on, and ultimately this smaller juvenile channel catfish did end up getting hooked. These small channel catfish, despite their much smaller mouths, are often very voracious, especially if bait are present, and if an angler weren't paying attention to their rods, they might end up ultimately swallowing the hook, even if it's a circle hook. Throughout the many years whenever I'm fishing the summer to fall transition, I've noticed that a lot of these juvenile channel catfish are often actively hunting the threadfin shad. Because of this, more times than not this time of year, these fish will often get to the bait first before the adult catfish will. This juvenile channel catfish somehow managed to get hooked, and I'll show him to you guys real quick before letting him go. These fish are plenty of fun on lighter tackle, but I am not retaining him, so off you go. The catfish in this area were attacking the bait balls quite actively. Both rods were getting bit, but the right hand rod was getting bit a whole lot much more. I ended up picking up the right hand rod first because at first I thought maybe this catfish ended up hooking himself and I didn't want him to swallow the hook. But as I tightened up the line, I ended up losing this catfish on the right hand rod, but the left hand rod decided to take off as well. The catfish on the left hand rod did end up hooking himself, so I ended up putting the right hand rod down and picking up the left hand rod. I knew right away that this wasn't a channel catfish and that this is a white catfish. Only the white catfish will run side to side and will not perform death rolls. Yes, the baby channel catfish, despite being juveniles, will perform death rolls. However, the white catfish will often run side to side, as I mentioned in many of my previous episodes, very much like a small carp. Unlike the channel catfish that are actively hunting the bait balls of threadfin shad, what I've noticed is white catfish will tend to sit underneath the bait balls and just wait for whatever gets injured and pushed to the bottom of the lake. These catfish, if an angler were to retain them during this time of year, an angler will often find bits and pieces of threadfin shad and scales in their gut, telling an angler that these fish are indeed picking up the threadfin shad. This is a white catfish and not a channel catfish. New Melones is pretty notorious for producing quite a bit of these guys. Not a lot of anglers retain them though, so I will show him to you guys real quick before letting him go. Alright buddy, off you go. As the day progressed, I noticed that the bait ball were slowly moving to the other side of the cove. The rod on the right hand side ended up getting a very slow bite, and I wasn't exactly sure if this catfish ended up hooking himself. This catfish did indeed ended up hooking himself, and I knew right away that I got myself another juvenile catfish. For some strange reason, these juvenile channel catfish during this time of year are quite active. I can fish the entire early summer and into late summer without encountering these guys. However, as fall rolls around, these guys seem to show up out of nowhere. I believe that during the summer to fall transition, because of the massive schools of threadfin shad, a lot of these catfish will often congregate very similar to a wolf pack. So therefore, they're often present here in great numbers, along with some of the bigger catfish. This was a small juvenile channel catfish nonetheless. Alright little guy, off you go. While baiting up the rod on the left hand side because I believed that a smaller catfish got to it, I ended up getting the right hand rod back out and it ended up getting a very violent bite. I knew right away that this violent bite was an adult channel catfish because it began to perform death rolls immediately. The wind was dying down and I noticed that the bait ball seemed to be on the other side of the lake. So after this fish, I will be making a move to the other side of this cove. I am going to follow the bait ball because more times than not, what will happen is these channel catfish and catfish in general are following the bait. So I want to place my bait as close to the bait balls as I can. I am going to follow the bait, and some anglers might be wondering why can't I just cast to the bait, but what I really like to do is place the bait either directly up and over and down below the bait ball. I personally find that by doing so, I often can get a few more bites out of the areas. Yes, this time of year a catfish angler can be mobile and catch quite a handful of fish from the bank. These fish are actively hunting bait, so if an area doesn't really have bait, I am not going to target that area, and what this means is a catfish angler will not often get to decide if catfish are going to be at said area. The bait fish in the water will dictate where these catfish will hold this time of year. So the bank angler this time of year must be flexible in the area that they are picking to fish. This was another very nice channel catfish as it got closer. The death rolls were insane on this fish. I think this fish was actually a little bit smaller than the last fish I caught, but fought so much harder. I was just pleasantly surprised that this catfish managed to get to the bait before the smaller catfish did. This was another very healthy channel catfish. When it comes down to channel catfish in general during this time of year, a lot of these adult fish will be present and mixed in with the juvenile fish, so an angler, especially when fishing from the bank, will just have to weather through the area, and eventually, hopefully, one of these adult fish will find the bait. I'll show this fish to you guys real quick, and it was another very healthy channel catfish. This fish is definitely a male fish, judging from his very broad head. I'll show him to you guys real quick, and I'll prep him for release. Alright buddy, rest up a bit and off you go. So I decided to pack up and move to the other side of the cove. I noticed that the bait were here on this other side and I wanted to give this a try in order to see if the catfish were actively hunting right beneath the bait ball of threadfin shad. The threadfin shad on the shallow side were a bit on the smaller side. They were averaging around 1 to 2.5 inches. Whereas the threadfin shad that seemed to be in the middle of this cove were averaging about 3.5 to 4 inches. I think some of them were even around 5 inches, judging from how the grebes were chasing the fish and pushing them to the bank. Simply by changing sides based on where the bait is located, a bank angler can pick up quite a few more bites by simply moving. I ended up setting both rods down, and as I expected, the rod on the right hand side ended up getting bit. I knew right away that I got myself a white catfish because it began running side to side rather than performing death rolls. This, however, was one jumbo white catfish. Judging from how he's pulling side to side, I think this white catfish might actually be above 2 pounds. Typically this reservoir will produce a lot of 1 pound white catfish. Unlike Lake Berryessa up in the vine country, The motherlode lakes, whenever they're producing white catfish, will often produce white catfish roughly about a pound. So to see a white catfish of this size was quite a pleasant surprise. I really do think these white catfish are underrated. They actually fight pretty well on light tackle, and they are readily available. This species, however, is considered quite a pest when anglers are out here targeting channel catfish. A lot of anglers really do dislike this species because when targeting channel catfish, this catfish will often get to the bait first. A lot of local anglers around my area consider this catfish to be quite a pest whenever they are targeting channel catfish and stripers, but I think they're ultra cool, and I'll show this fish to you guys real quick before returning him to the water. Alright dude, off you go. The rod on the left hand side ended up getting bit. This rod was placed in the shallow water where there were the smaller group of threadfin shad present. This time of year, an angler should never dismiss the shallow water if bait fish are present, because catfish will hunt in as little as 5 feet of water if there is bait present. I picked up the rod and knew right away that I caught myself another white catfish. It began running side to side again, and this fish felt just as good as the last white catfish I caught on the right hand rod. I am not picky whenever I'm out catfish fishing, whether it be the bullhead species or the channel catfish. I am happy just to catch them all. This white catfish was a very jumbo white catfish, and typically speaking, if I were to be retaining white catfish, this would make a perfect sized meal, but I am not retaining any fish today, so I will let this guy go. Despite having a very giant mouth, what I've noticed is a lot of white catfish will often make roving maneuvers whenever they're attacking a bait. Before committing, more times than not, an angler will notice that the rod tip will move very slightly before doubling over, because a lot of these white catfish will do what I call a test bite. They'll often test the bait just a little bit before completely grabbing the bait. A circle hook is really great at hooking white catfish, especially for catch and release. However, if an angler were to retain this fish, I believe a much better hook choice will be an octopus hook. An octopus hook will give an angler a direct response to grab the white catfish the moment it starts testing the bait. However, what I have found is an octopus hook is not good for catch and release when it comes down to the white catfish. I'll show this fish to you guys real quick, and he is very robust, very healthy, and very well fed. Alright buddy, rest up a bit and you can go off too. I barely got the left hand rod back into the water, and while I was setting it up, the right hand rod ended up getting bit. I'm going to see if I could get a few more bites before calling it quits for the day, because the sun was just unbearable. Summer is at its ends, however the daytime temperatures are still quite warm. The nighttime temperatures, however, had changed quite a bit, and we are experiencing a lot much shorter days now, and the nighttime temperatures are also a lot much cooler. I knew right away that this fish was a channel catfish because of the death rolls it was performing. This wasn't a big channel catfish by any metric or standard, but I'll take what I can get before calling it quits for the day. This was one very healthy juvenile channel catfish. He was very fat and very well fed, and judging from his belly, I can tell he was probably feasting on the schools of threadfin shad in this area. I'll show him to you guys real quick, and I'll let him go as well. Overall, it was just a great day out here on the banks of New Melones. I caught quite a handful of catfish for the camera, and summer is at its ends. The weather is only going to get cooler. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, tight lines y'all.